can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your ministry?
Absolutely. Pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me and taking the opportunity to just explore the life that I get to live. My name is Mac Youngblood, and I'm the Director of Communications for World Gospel Outreach. And I am physically located in Tegucigalpa, Honduras, where we have what we call our mission house. And I have my beautiful wife, Ashley. We have been married for 19 years. We have two girls, Amelia and Addison, and Amelia will be 18 coming up in the fall, and Addison is 15 and a half. And so it's an amazing opportunity that we get to do. We get to say that we live in another country, and that was not on my wheelhouse or bingo board, if you will, to be able to say. So it's a neat opportunity for us to serve in another country. So World Gospel Outreach, founded in 1984 by a guy out of Little Rock, Arkansas, Alan Danforth. Guy just loved Jesus, and he wanted to provide for the people of Tegucigalpa, Honduras. And so he saw an opportunity. We all know that the Dole and Chiquita bananas come in the containers from Central America, right? Yeah. Well, what do they do from Central America to the U.S.? They come in full. Well, but they return empty. So he and a group of guys saw this as an opportunity to just reach out to Dole and say, hey, can we fill those containers with goods and send them back to Honduras? Well, this is back in the early 80s, and so you pull out the phone book, Yellow Pages, and he went through there and he found the phone number to Dole. Through an error, but God's designed error, he actually reached out and got in touch with the president of Dole. And he goes, how did you get this phone number? You were supposed to have been screened. And he says, I just dialed the number that I found. And so he said, okay, what's on your mind? And so he said, this is what I want to do. Can we work out something? And he goes, this is your project. It's on you. You take care of it, and we'll allow it to happen. So back in 1984, the ministry of World Gospel Outreach started by a group of gentlemen that filled the containers with rice and beans and clothes, and that was all transported to Tegucigalpa, Honduras, to begin what was their outreach to reach people for Christ. And I can't tell you how amazing it is, just the amount of people that have come to serve. Since 1984, it has developed into a children's home that we call Rancho Ebenezer, that is in the hills of outside of Tegucigalpa. It's a refuge. It's basically what you would explain as a first world not an orphanage, an organization just that is up a third world road. So we're able to provide 365 days of care. We have psychologists on staff, social workers on staff. We have a school on the campus. They're able to complete the equivalent of a high school education there, which is huge in the country of Honduras. And so that's an amazing opportunity. We also expanded into Belize back in 2015. And we have a campus over there in Belmopan, right there in the capital of Belize. And that has opened us up to be able to cross the border over into Guatemala, where we have started serving with a group over there. And it's so difficult to get to this section of Guatemala that if you say you're going to fly into Guatemala City, this is like a 9-hour drive. But for us, it's only a couple of hours. So that's a neat opportunity there. And we are launching into Costa Rica coming up this fall. So that is the long answer to your short question of who am I. My name is Mac, and I love Jesus and I love to serve.
What first led you to become a missionary?
The simple question to that is God, because I didn't want to do this. I graduated from Mississippi State University back in 2006 with a business degree. I had aspirations of becoming an attorney. That shifted gears, and I ended up selling insurance for State Farm. And I loved insurance. I loved helping people. I loved being there to say, this is how we can help. And when the house fire happens and you go and assist people, when someone needs you after a car wreck, those are the things that I really enjoy doing. I love helping others. And so service had always been on my heart, but in the ways that I felt was correct. And my wife, when we first met back in 2005, she pretty much told me within the first few weeks that she wanted to do missions. And I said, that's great. I don't. I just love to serve. I just don't want to do missions as my any kind of full-time job. I just didn't understand it, what that meant for me. And so I really kind of had to take a moment to say, what does this look like? So we had an opportunity to go on a trip to our children's home, Rancho Ebenezer, in 2013. And I was at a position where I was going to interview with State Farm the following week, and things were good. And I was like, man, this is neat to understand a whole new culture, which was Honduras. And it was my first time really exploring someplace that wasn't a beach. And I said, okay, this is awesome. I didn't understand what was outside of the South. And so we went down and served, and we had a great time. And as my wife always jokes, I tagged along on the trip to ensure that she came back and didn't try to bring a child home. And so that was really neat for us to enjoy, but it didn't matter because remember, I had an interview with State Farm the following week. And so I interviewed for that. I came in second place, but by God's design. And so fast forward about 7 or 8 months, there was an opportunity to come back to the mission field and partner up with Rancho Ebenezer again. And so we said, you know what, this is really cool. Let's go back. And so my wife said, Mac, look, we kind of have to take an understanding of the State Farm thing may not be working out because I was in a 2-year program to be able to have my own agency. And that really just kind of fell through because I was in year 7 or 8 at this point, and it just wasn't really coming to fruition for us. And so during that trip, they said, hey, what do you think about being missionaries? And they were wanting us to be house parents for the children's home. And as much as I love kids, I don't want to do that as my full-time job. I know where I have limits. And I just said, I can't do this. And so what led me to missions was this constant nudge of someone saying, hey, what do you think about serving? What do you think about doing this in a different way? And that, to me, opened up my heart to say, am I surrendering to God? And I want to tell you, I wasn't. Now, granted, I grew up in the church. Loved Jesus, baptized when I was young, rededicated my life when I was 15, 16 years old, and just followed Jesus through all of this time. But I wasn't surrendering to Jesus. And so that is, I think, one of the biggest things that kind of helped me to understand what does it look like to serve and to be a missionary, and how do I get called to being a missionary. It was our second trip after a full week of me being hounded about, well, what does it look like to be a missionary? Well, you got to come serve for this many years. They want a 4-year commitment. I'll give you a 2-year commitment. You got to raise this much money. I'll give you half. Language school for 6 months. I'll give you 3 months. And I didn't care. I didn't want to do it. And I just kept on saying, gosh, I can't do this. And so it's the final night. It was that Friday night, and the girls were on one side, the men were on the other side. And the women, as we like to joke and say, is the women were just laying hands on Ashley and saying, Lord, just heal Mac. He's sinning. He doesn't know what he's doing. He needs to follow you better. And then I'm over here saying, guys, I need plan B. Like, help me out of this because I don't want to be a missionary. I need to know, what if plan A fails? Plan A is joining the mission field and coming here. It's like, I mean, what if I don't raise enough money? What if I don't like it? What if I don't make any friends? What if I can't find a church? What if my girls hate it? Here I am. I'm trying to be the provider and leader for our family. And I just kept saying, I don't know if I can do this. And so it was the group of guys that just said, Mac, maybe plan A is the plan and there is no plan B. That was tough to hear because I'd always been a proper planner. And so what if plan A is the plan? That struck me. And so I just said, all right, God, if you want me to be a missionary, I need you to change my heart because I don't see things the way that my wife does. Help me to understand what it means to serve and to surrender. So God just stood there and just said, challenge accepted. And so in God's divine way, he opened that door and introduced me to who was the COO at the time, a guy named Robert. Love the guy. And we started to talk and connect. We're at the airport. We're sipping on a last bit of really good coffee. And he said, "So tell me about yourself." And I said, "I work with State Farm." And he goes, "Really?" And I said, "Why'd you say it like that?" And he said, "Well, I used to work with State Farm." And so there's God opening that door to say, "Hey, look, it's okay. I'm going to connect you with somebody to help you understand that you too can come from what I thought was like an improper background. I thought that I needed certain amount of credit hours or certain theological studies or whatever. I mean, I'm a guy who loves Jesus who graduated with a business degree. So how does that qualify me to be a missionary?" And so God opened up that door to help me to understand that I could serve in a different capacity within the mission organization. And so I started out in human resources, and that came with helping to onboard people and helping to talk to people and encourage them to consider what this life could look like. Because I came from State Farm. I faced rejection all the time. Who wants to buy insurance? Nobody. Who wants insurance when they have an issue? Everyone. And so it's one of those things that you can't see, touch it, feel it, or use it on a regular basis. So it just becomes a burden to have to buy insurance. And so the big joke is I went from selling life insurance to selling eternal insurance, which happens to be free, something you can't see, touch, or feel, but you get to experience it. And when you do get to use it, you're eternally grateful for it. And we're guaranteed to die, and we're guaranteed that we have an opportunity to go to heaven if we surrender to Jesus and commit our life to him and admit that we are sinners. And so for me, that was just a really cool thing that I went from selling life insurance to eternal insurance at free of charge, and just encouraging people to come to the mission field and helping them to overcome these objections. Because let's be honest, doing something, as this book here says, radical, do something radical with your life. And what does it mean to sell everything? I had my whole life here. My family was here. And that was tough to say goodbye to. But I saw somebody, after having been on the mission field since 2015, actually July 14th will start our 12th year of ministry. And I saw a guy a few weeks ago, and he goes, "Mac, the man with the huge yard sale." I remember that. We sold everything. And we moved to the mission field with 6 suitcases, 2 dogs, and a box full of tools, and a family of 4, and nowhere to live. And we just said, okay, this is great. So our ministry helped to set us up in a home, and they took us to the store where I was handy. I built my bed out of some wood, and my friend of mine took me over to buy some pallet wood, literally. That's what we made our couch out of. And we just started to slowly build our life living overseas. And it was neat because we got to say yes to God after surrendering ourselves. And I will tell you, saying yes to God was the hardest thing I had ever done in my life. The most radical thing I'd ever done. And the best thing that I have ever done. Moving myself to, at the time, Honduras was statistically the highest murder rate per capita in the entire world. So why would we move and go do something dangerous? Yeah, that was real. But after having lived there, we kind of realized that I'm more at risk of getting shot in Walmart by a random person here in the States than I was down there. The murder rate was high due to the gang-on-gang violence. And that, to me, was like, well, I feel safer in a more dangerous country. It's kind of wild to think about, but we do. There are dangerous parts of every city that you can visit. So guess what we don't do? Go visit those areas without proper connections. And what my time has taught me, living overseas and working within Tegucigalpa, which Tegucigalpa is huge. It's about 1.6, 1.7 million people crammed into a really small space. So there are people on top of people there. And there are areas where we work with the local churches in high risk, high tension, gang run neighborhoods. But the gangs respect the churches respect the gangs. We provide medical relief, and we use ways to reach people: medicine, construction, water filters, going in and even painting someone's home, giving them a concrete floor, coming and loving them on, and just meeting them where they're at. We use all of these ways, not for the object that it is, but for the opportunity that it presents. Every person that we come in contact with, we talk to them about their eternal salvation. And so we talk to them about the physical medicine that we may give them, because we're there for their eternal medicine. And we want to make sure that both are in good check. And so when you see somebody put on the new pair of glasses to be able to read their Bible, and they receive a new Bible, and we get to talk to them about what their relationship looks like, that's neat. And by working with the local churches, we're not the ones, North Americans, WGO, we are not the people that are coming in and doing these things. It's God moving through us, because what happens after we leave? We're gone, right? Yes. Excuse me. But the pastors, those are the ones that we're there to help, to build into them, to help encourage them as they continue their walk in life. And so the more we can pour into the pastors, the more we can encourage them to have more knowledge on the Bible, to just pour into them in different ways, they're able to take that back to their communities, because the fight is just beginning. And these opportunities of going and doing a mission trip or an outreach, if you will, it opens a door for them to connect to their community in a way that they did not connect before. And that's one of the things I love doing, is sharing my story of how I became a missionary. A guy who did not want to do missions. God said, I'm going to now have you in charge of talking to people about doing missions. And I said, okay, God, you're in control, not me. So he used my experiences in life. I was a cheerleader at Mississippi State. If we remember the Coach Kroom era, where we were, I think, 2-9, it was a terrible time. I really learned how to overcome adversity, of trying to get a bunch of upset people to be happy, to be excited about a losing football program. And luckily we had basketball during that time, so that was a good relief. So I learned how to overcome adversity with that. I worked with State Farm, where I dealt with objections every single day, and just really diving into a whole new culture and within the business world of selling insurance, to now working in another area, but it's still serving God. And that to me is something I didn't understand, is I'm just another guy. You knew me as Mac around the corner, and now I get to say I'm Mac from around the corner, just a little further down the street, down in Honduras, and I get to love on people, and that's my job. I said, how cool is it? I get to remind myself all the time that I get to do this. I get to love on others. And so one of the beautiful things that I have been able to develop and grow is sharing with people about the opportunity to serve. Because do we need more missionaries in the world? 100%. People often kind of have this understanding, well, I need to go off and I need to live in a mud hut, and I may not have a working bathroom, I may not have this, I may not have that, and I need to be in this area, I need to go do these things, I need to go live in an area where I'm completely uncomfortable. Just your imagination can run wild. And we kind of have to take a step back and say, hold on one second, it may not be that crazy, because that's kind of what I thought and knew, was that I'm going to have to do and sacrifice way more than what I was comfortable with understanding. And I get to share with people, maybe your mission field, it may be the 1040 window. It may be working in Africa. It may be working in Europe. It may be working in Central America. It may be working with us. It may be working in your backyard. And a lot of people don't realize that. And I just say, go do what you're good at. But one of the things I want you to go ask is, and be prepared for it, is, God, where do you want me? to serve? How do I serve you today? Because it may be that he's saying, I want you to serve the neighbor literally 3 minutes away from you. And that's scary. It is. But that's what we need to do. Go do something radical, because nothing good in this world is done from the mundane. We have to step out of our comfort zone. We have to be okay with that. Maybe you have something that can be offered to another ministry even while you're sitting wherever you're watching this video. Be willing to say yes to something that's awesome, because you may not realize how cool it can be.
Amen. That's amazing. And I love the story. It just shows me a lot of instances of you saying yes to God. And saying that, this next question would be, what have you learned about trusting God through this whole process?
We are fundraising missionaries, so 100% of our salary that is set by the organization, that you need to raise this much money in order to have a successful life where you live based on your qualifications and needs and things, is you need to raise your money. And that to me was wild. I grew up just kind of knowing that I go work for somebody, I become a W-2 employee, and I have a paycheck and everything's great, and trusting that God's in control. And, he allowed us to raise money. And I love that. It challenged me in more ways than I could imagine. And in my audacity, I said I could raise $250,000 in 3 phone calls. I called those 3 people and I netted $1,400. I said, okay, God, you want me to work for this, don't you? And he said, yes. And I said, okay, let's go to work then. And he just said, I need you to trust me that I'm in control of your finances. And I had to let go. And I said, and I challenged myself and I said, God, this is a struggle of mine. I can't let go of it right now. Help me to do that. And so I just said, God, I give you my finances. I want to trust you differently. Got to a point where I was a little cocky. I didn't tithe my first year. It was really tough. So much so that we started our mission, as I mentioned earlier, on July 14th. And it was near July again. And we're on home assignment, raising funds for the next year. And we had a situation where we only had enough money for 13% of our paycheck. And that was humbling, but we didn't go without. And I said, Ashley, we have to get right with God. He trusted us to do right by him. And just even on the aspect of tithing, I said, babe, we have to live tighter. We're going to have to adjust things. And we made up that year that we didn't tithe properly. And we haven't missed a paycheck since. We have been fully funded to come here and meet with our supporters every year. And it's truly a blessing that God puts people into your path that you never would have imagined would have ever walked in front of you and said, hey, I want to be part of your mission. And there are people that we have been able to be a blessing to where they aren't followers of Christ, but they loved who we are and loved what we were doing. And so our connection was able to help impact them in good ways. And it's neat whenever you get to say, okay, God, you're in control. But it's almost a daily reminder that you have to say, this is God's world. We just get to live in it. And how do we be the best that we can be? Because we're fallen, broken people. And to be able to say, God, I trust you. I trust that you're in control. Help me through, name the problem. And for me, vocalizing that was a big step in my faith to say, God, I'm not in control of these areas. Help me through them because of the anxiety of this. I got 2 girls, raising them as, at the time, they've been primarily the only 2 North American girls in the entire school. And that was, it comes with its own struggles. And granted, as we like to say, I can't. You probably wouldn't have these same problems here. Well, as a matter of fact, we would. because what teenager isn't going to have some sort of issues or problems? And it's like, well, if you lived in the U.S., we wouldn't have these. No, that's not true. We would still have these same issues, whether we lived here or Guatemala or Europe or wherever. You're just going to change one problem for another. And that goes back to trusting that God has us exactly where we need to be right when he needs us. With our church, Pine Lake, we had an opportunity to connect with our missionaries, and we do that about every 2 years. And we get all of the missionaries together as best as we possibly can, and we just get to just be honest and open and just say, these are the things that we're struggling with. And we're talking with some friends of ours that are in a country where they don't get to share about who they are as followers of Christ openly. And that to me is tough, being in an area where I couldn't talk about my faith. And then my wife says, Mac, how good do we have it that we get to live in a country where we get to talk openly about Jesus? Yet our friends are over here and they have to pour into one another. And by one another, husband, wife, and their 3 kids. And that's all they have. It broke my heart. And it just made me realize that God's in control and he puts us where we need to be. But he also is calling you to step out. He's calling you to go out and serve. In this world of an ever increasingly problematic society that we have, how do we serve better? It's by stepping out into faith and saying yes to something that's very difficult to do in a lot of times. But being willing to say, yes, I trust you, God. A big issue, even with the Catholicism down in Honduras, is it's a little different theology of Catholicism, and we run into several works-based aspects of that. And it's like, well, yeah, I'm Catholic, and okay, well, how often do you go to Mass? Oh, I mean, gosh, ugh. And it just, we have those same situation here, even our evangelicals. And so it's, how do we get away from, well, I'll just check the box? And you have to dig deep, and you have to be willing to sacrifice what you know and love in the sense of comfort and do something about it. And we're not made for this world, and you're not going to get out alive. Might as well do something with it to empower and better somebody. And I think somebody told me last week, I can't remember exactly how he framed it, but we're either going to be goers, senders, or prayer warriors, we'll call them. And he had framed it, we're either going or we're sending or we're dead. That was one other. Oh, okay. He goes, you might as well just not even be around if you're not willing to help. And it's like, oh gosh. And this guy says, we were giving away 50% of our income and now we're giving away 30. And I'm like, oh gosh, that's wild to think about. Okay, you're an amazing man. But he says, that's where God challenged me. And so, yeah, how do we be part of that in one way or another?
As a missionary, changed your relationship with Jesus over this course of time?
How has serving changed my relationship?
Or has it?
As I'd mentioned before, I'd always enjoyed serving, just not realizing how God was going to use it to change my heart and my life. I have become more empathetic to people's situations. We're dealing with a big migration issue in the U.S. I know that. We're not going to get political, but I'm a guest in another country. And I kind of understand some of the issues that are going on with the migration here. And so it's changed my heart to serve others differently, to look at this with a little more of a gentle lens of loving on people who, let's be honest, they're illegal. They know they're illegal. They are at risk of being deported back to their country. And I was walking through a neighborhood in Honduras, and I had on my Ariat boots They had just been shined, and so I'm walking through the dirt streets with my shine boots, and this guy in English said, "Hey, those are nice boots." And I'm thinking, "Oh gosh, I've got people with me, and I need to be prepared because we're in a hot zone." And he goes, "Where did you get them?" And I said, "Oh, I got them in Mississippi." And he goes, "Oh, Mississippi, I've been through there." And I said, "Really? Why?" And he goes, "Well, because I take the train and I ride on top of the train as we cross over into the U.S." And I said, illegally? And he goes, "Well, yeah. And I was just deported 3 weeks ago, and I'm saving up to go back." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And so he said, "Yeah, I crossed through, and I catch rides, and I pass through Mississippi." And I said, "Okay." And he goes, "Yeah, I spent most of my life in the Boston area. My parents lived there, and I crossed over illegally, but my parents were legal, and it's a long story." And I said, "Okay." So it helped me to become more sympathetic to that situation, but it also, my boots offered an opportunity for us to share Christ with this guy. And he goes, I really feel like I've fallen off the path." And I said, "Okay, so tell me, how do we pray for you?" And he says, "Well, I'm leaving to go back to the U.S. here soon." And I said, "Okay, so let's just take this opportunity to pray for safe travels, because we don't want anything bad to happen, and to pray for your relationship. Pray that you get involved in your local church and that you really find your way back to Christ." And so, serving has really brought me closer to God, knowing that, who am I? I'm just somebody who loves Jesus. And so are these people. Somebody needs to know who Jesus is, to have a better relationship with them, and to have that opportunity to grow closer and to surrender yourself and to take that road less traveled, as Walt Whitman said. And it's a glorious path. It's difficult, but the reward at the end is I'd rather die knowing that there is glory for eternity than I would anything else.
What would you say to someone who feels God may be calling them into ministry?
Ask yourself, what is it that you want to do? And then ask God, is that how you want me to serve? Be prepared for the answers that will come. Be right with yourself. And I'm going to be quite honest with you. When people come to serve with us, you're a no until you can be a yes, until you can prove why you're a yes. If you have issues that you're dealing with where you're frustrated, you feel like, if I just become a missionary, my problems will go away. It'll fix my marriage, it'll fix my relationship with my children, it'll help me with my anger. I want to tell you right now, that is 100% false. The moment you say yes to God, your life will become increasingly more difficult. Why? Because Satan ramps up his style, his aggravation. He becomes more frustrated, and he will attack you where you are the weakest. And so I want to be honest with you, and I want you to understand that when you say yes to serving God, things are going to get difficult. But that's okay. Why? We're doing something radical here. So as we say yes to doing God's work, you have to be prepared for the work that's going to come and to move forward. And these areas that you're the weakest, I want you to go figure those out. I want you to show some humility, that you need to go up to your brother or sister, someone who can pour truth and honesty into you, and say, these are things that I need you to work on. I need you to work on maturity. I need you to work on your interpersonal skills. I need you to work on your ability to work with others. I need you to work on your anger. I need you to work on just whatever the problem may be. And the reason being is because it's going to make you a better person. I would encourage you to consider talking with a psychologist for a little while, someone in the church, just to help make sure that you're good. Because whatever skeletons are buried deep are going to be brought to the surface. There have been times that we've had people come on board, and we do an independent psychological evaluation with a Christian organization, and they say, here are some things that we recognize you need to work on. And we've had people say, I can't believe you would even think that I have these issues. Well, we say the independent psychologist said that you need to go work on these things. And they go off and they go work on those things for the period of months that they put in ahead of them. And at the end of it, we'll get a message that says, hey, I just want to tell you that I can't thank you enough. Because if you aren't a better person for who you are yourself, how can you be a good missionary? We've had a situation where many, many years ago, somebody was dealing with frustration and anger, and they were working with us, and he actually kind of bowed up to our staff and trying to get ready to fight them. And they're like, you have an anger problem. Do you know what's going on? And this was prior to our psychological evaluations that we put into place. And so at the time, the person that was in charge called and spoke to the pastor of this person and said, hey, were you aware that they had an anger problem? And the pastor said, well, yeah, I was aware that they had an anger problem. That's what the mission field is for. It's going to help fix them because you're out doing the good things. And he goes, that's not how the mission field works. We need you to come pick him up. We're taking him to the airport tomorrow. And that's it. Those are the things I want you to realize, that when you say yes to serving God, whatever frustrations you're dealing with, they're only going to compound and get worse. For me and my family, I found out that I had a tumor on my thyroid that I had to have removed. It was benign, good news. My wife had a hysterectomy at the age of 28. 6 months prior to us moving, our finances were attacked. Our relationship with both sides of our parents was really pulled to the brink, and it was something that it made us question, are we doing what we need to be doing? And every time I would get close to the edge, the metaphorical ledge of jumping off and saying, I'm done with this, my wife would grab my shirt and pull me back and say, hold on one second, what's going on? How do we work through this? Every time she would get close, going, Mac, I can't do this, my health, my frustrations, my this, my that. It really got to the point where I was like, okay, Ashley, hold on one second, what's going on? Let me pull you back off the ledge. And we realized that if Satan is so mad at little old me, we must be doing something right for the Lord. So as soon as you say yes, be prepared for a spiritual battle. Be prepared and know who you are. Be willing to go talk with somebody that is willing to speak honesty and truth into you, that can help you understand how you can improve in your life. Because if you can't be 100% on the mission field, it's going to make your time serving that much more difficult. So figure out, how do you become good? And that may be a small step by going and doing something radical just 10 minutes down the road from you. Start there. Go figure that out. Go visit another ministry. Go serve abroad if that's what it is. If it's to serve local, go serve local. But go serve and go volunteer with them in one way or another. And be willing to say, okay, God, you're in control. Because with me, it was finances. How am I going to afford to do this? How am I going to get to the next place? And God said, I've got you. Because I said, Lord, I am putting this into your hands. Because I didn't believe that I could raise the money that I needed to raise. I want to tell you, after 12 years of raising support, God's in control. I'm not. And the moment that I think that I am, he reminds me. And I said, yes, Lord, you're in control. I'm so sorry. And so it's really a neat thing to say, yes, I'm going to go serve.
How can people pray for you in your ministry?
So World Gospel Outreach is a ministry. We've been around for, as I mentioned, 42 years this past January. And the growth of it is just it's awesome to see. And as we continue to grow and develop, and with new partnerships, pray for those partnerships. We have 28 kids. We just brought in a new kid to our children's ministry. Pray for those children, and we raise them from the ages that we get them, which is typically 6 months, a little older, to the time that they graduate, which is around 18. And pray for them. Pray for their opportunities to find success in this world, and we want to raise them to become productive members of Honduran society. And many of them do. They come out with speaking English better than I do a lot of times. And so coming out with a bilingual education and helping them to get to the next phase of their life and to watch them be successful when their alternative would have been much worse, it's really neat. So pray about the opportunities to get involved with the ministry and to serve. We have great ways to do that. So as far as prayer, pray for us to continue fighting the good fight, whether we're venturing off into new countries or just enhancing the ones that we're working with currently in with our different areas. As far as me and my family, it's awesome. My girls were 6 and 4 when they moved down there, not speaking Spanish, and my dogs, we had 2 dogs at the time, and we said, my youngest daughter goes, well, how are they going to speak to the other dogs? And my youngest daughter says, well, they just have to roll their R's when they go rough. And so we just thought that was really cute. And then I look at who the young ladies that they've become, where they go out and we let them skip school every now and again and go translate for the North Americans that come down and serve. And it's pretty neat that they get to do that. So continuing to pray for my 15-year-old, my 17-year-old, as they are in school. They're normal teenage girls. My oldest is going to be a senior this year, and my other is going to be going into 10th grade. And so it's an exciting time for us. My wife is a teacher at the same school. She teaches 3rd grade, and just want to say, if you're a teacher, God bless you. You're an amazing person. It is a calling, and it's a wonderful thing. It's still a calling because being a teacher is tough. So just pray for wisdom and pray for the opportunities that we have to just reach out and for us to continue to be a light in the difficulties that come, that I don't share those frustrations outwardly. I'm quite a emotional individual, and so we know when Mac is happy, we know when Mac is sad or mad. And so just for me to be able to be a good leader with my family is what I strive to continue to do, because Satan steps in where we're most weak, and I don't want that to be a hindrance as we continue to walk our walk with Christ.
Besides giving financially, how can people get involved?
Volunteering your time, becoming a guest worker with WGO is something that I think people take for granted. You may see things and people being in and around and go, oh, okay, well, you're good. I want to tell you that we're good because of the people that we have on staff, whether they are long-term or short-term. Consider coming in teaching. Now, we had a girl who graduated college and she took a gap year, and she's going into medical school currently, and she was working in our school. And so people are like, well, what makes her a teacher? She wasn't, but she worked in the school, and she was just an assistant where kids were having a bad day, a rough moment. She would be able to pull them out and just talk with them, pray with them, and help them through those difficult situations. And so you may not realize, like, oh, well, I'm not called, I'm not equipped. You are called, you are equipped to do these amazing things. And it's like, oh, okay, so coming in, can you build? Great. We have a lot of construction projects around our mission house, our children's home. We're just, you have no idea how much you can do with so little that you think that you have to offer. So coming and volunteering is a great way to get plugged in, whether you're going to come for a week and volunteer or you're going to come for 6 months and volunteer. Just say, God, what do you have in store for me? So we'd love to have more people come down and serve, to just love on us as a staff, to help give us a break as we pull tough team seasons and continue the work that we do, because as soon as a North American group exits, our work continues beyond that. So it's a beautiful thing to say, oh, cool, this is great. We're like, what is a week in the life? Well, we'll show you.
If you could leave everyone watching with one message, what would it be?
Be okay with trusting the unknown. When you walk stride and stride with God, He's going to protect you. We're not made for this world. Be prepared for the life that He truly wants you to live. It's going to be a glorious one. It's going to be tough. You're going to fall, but you have God there to pick you up, and it's going to be okay.
Amen. Well, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you coming here. And I just wanted to give you the platform if there's anything else you wanted to say. This could be ended now, or just like I said, just kind of giving you the ability to be able to say whatever you want to say.
No, just thank you to all of y'all for this platform to be able to share our story. It was just a beautiful opportunity for us to say yes to serving and just encouraging you. If it reaches one person, this was a success. I hope it reaches thousands upon thousands of people to say yes to a new chapter in their life. And if we can make heaven full, let's make heaven full. That's our ultimate goal in this life. We're not getting out of it alive. So let's end it on a good note, if you will.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Mac.
You bet.